separate or shouldn't be treated as separately as we usually do.
Yeah, this is another thing, right? If you think about the trajectory of Malaysian democracy, if that's where we want to go, then the question is, how do we prep the general population for the kind of things that need to happen in the future? Say, for instance, we want a complete overhaul in our electoral system. We want to go to something more like proportional representation or some form of it. And we need to put it to a referendum. Can you imagine putting together a referendum when most of the population is unaware of what the system currently is?
Well, Brexit, right, where so many people later said we didn't actually know what we were voting for, how this worked.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Brexit was a kind of political decision. This is like systems. When you put systems, like a referendum on a system, you know, the level of intricacy in that is high, right? So you want to prep people early.
If you'd like to keep those thoughts coming, you can WhatsApp 018-789-8899, tweet us at BFM Radio. After the 6 o'clock news today, we're going to be diving into a new study that has found that remote working did have a negative impact, particularly on younger and junior level employees, and that's particularly because they didn't get enough feedback. So we'd like to hear from you on how important feedback has been in your career. What's the best or worst feedback you've received at work? Let us know. Keep it here, BFM 89.9.
I think businesses complain all the time. You ask any businessman how was this year, they say, oh, last year was better. They always say that. But I think the main thing here is that please don't give excuses. You have been passing the cost to the consumers all the time. We know things are expensive. Everything is expensive. But restaurants are back. Stop complaining. You're making money.
The pandemic is over. The logistics disruption is stabilizing and things are going back to normal. And if you look at it from the positive side, because of the high logistics cost, many of our customers were unable to import. They held back all their orders simply because the freight cost is too high. Because of all this, the stores are now empty, the shelves are empty, and they are filling back again. So all these orders are coming in big numbers now.
For more conversations with industry captains on the business landscape, tune in to The Breakfast Grill, weekdays at 8 a.m. or download the podcast from our BFM app.
The BFM Breakfast Grill is brought to you by U Mobile, 5G now with you. The news on BFM 89.9.
Here are the main stories at 6 p.m. The Lost Food Project is working on a draft proposal for the government to introduce tax incentives for people and organizations over the monetary and non-monetary donations of food and essential items. Its business operations manager, Rosin Bazi, told BFM News this will encourage the manufacturing sector to donate such items.
For example, if we donate 1,000 boxes of chocolate, equivalent of the market price for that will then be given as a tax exemption to the donors. And also, businesses, one way they can assist or they can help towards this cause is basically adopting sustainable practices, such as reducing the use of single plastic. Some restaurants are not providing straws any longer. So those small changes that will actually really go a long way.
In Pahang, State Exco Dr. Sri Johari Harun says the impact of COVID-19 and massive floods have affected local authorities' assessment tax collection. He notes that other issues impacting collection include the economic uncertainties, taxpayers' financial situation, and bankruptcy status of premise owners. Johari adds that several initiatives are in place to encourage payment and to ensure higher collection this year, including organizing tax payment campaigns and mobile tax payment counters. Separately, Lim Guan Eng has urged Malaysians to lodge reports against Tan Sri Abdul Hadi Awang over his alleged extremist and racist politics. The DAP chairperson claimed the past president's brand of politics posed a threat to national unity and integration. Earlier, DAP said Jan Anthony Look said it would be impossible for DAP to work with PAS in its current form, asserting that PAS does not believe in multiculturalism.
The current PAS at its current form, the answer is a definite no. Let me give a very firm, definite no. Because they do not believe in multiculturalism. If you look at their statements, you look at the speeches, the views propagated by the president, they totally disregard Malaysia as a multiracial country. I think that is a big no as far as we are concerned.
In other news, KTNB will begin operating a steam train in January next year that will feature a traditional interior concept. KTNB says the tourism heritage steam locomotive train aims to attract local and foreign tourists to enjoy nature along the railway line. Kuala initial destinations for the steam train service before covering other destinations. And Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim urged ASEAN leaders to find the best solution for the Myanmar crisis, as the continuous geopolitical tensions could affect the region's peace and stability.
Chairman Jokowi has alluded, challenging ASEAN leaders to focus its deliberations on the imperative that ASEAN remains vigilant in safeguarding its freedom, independence and dignity. That challenge includes to seek an amicable resolution to the Myanmar issue. As a result of these protracted negotiations, member countries, particularly Malaysia, has to grapple with more than 200,000 Burmese refugees.
Elsewhere, Hong Kong legislators have granted the city's leader the power to veto foreign lawyers from national security cases. The city's courts will have to obtain a certificate from the chief executive, John Lee, in order to allow a foreign lawyer to participate in such a case. Previously, foreign lawyers were allowed to practice on an ad hoc basis, provided they were qualified in their own jurisdiction. Over in the US, a woman in Utah who published a children's book about grief after the sudden death of her husband has been charged with his murder. This comes after a medical examiner found that Eric Richards had died from a fentanyl overdose and had 5 times the lethal dosage of the drug in his system. Earlier, Cora Richards admitted to making her husband a drink before he was found unconscious, with evidence showing that she had obtained fentanyl on 2 occasions. At the SEA Games, Izul Irfan has won the men's below 65kg Pencak Silat category, marking Malaysia's 4th gold medal in the sport. Earlier, Nofara Mazlan also bagged a gold medal in the women's below 50kg category. In business news, DXN Holdings Berhad says it plans to grow its business by further penetrating existing and new markets, as well as launching new products. Meanwhile, CEO Teo Hang Ching also told BFM the health products company will not neglect its face-to-face direct selling activities, despite the up-and-coming e-commerce distribution model.
What the online sale can do, we can do. But what we can do, most likely they cannot. That is also very important. For us, especially the direct selling sales, you cannot be all the time on brochure. Nowadays, a lot of wellness and health consumers, they prefer personal touch, personal relationship.
Malaysia's end April palm oil inventories fell 10.5% from March to 1.5 million tons, their lowest in 11 months, after production and exports plunged more than anticipated. The Malaysian Palm Oil Board says CPO production declined 7% to 1.2 million tons, its lowest since February last year, due to fewer harvesting days amid the idle Fitri season. Separately, Proton New Energy Technology has appointed HubSense Smart as the first authorized dealer for its new energy vehicles. HubSense Smart will feature ProNet's all-new EV Smart One's premium brand presence in Malaysia by year-end. Elsewhere, Singapore's parliament was told that family offices in the Republic have not bought a single residential property there in the past 6 years. The Ministry of State for Trade and Industry says, as such, family offices have had virtually no impact on Singapore's private housing market. It adds that single-family offices, which were granted tax incentives, manage about 90 billion Sing dollars in assets as at 2021. This is less than 2% of the 5.4 trillion in total assets under management in the city-state. And in India, a tribunal has granted bankruptcy protection to First and ordered a moratorium on the airline's assets and leases. The National Company Law Tribunal also appointed an interim resolution professional who will take over management of the company with immediate effect. In markets, the FPM KLCI closed down 0.5% at 1,426 points. Markets in Europe are negative, with France's CAC down 0.2%, while the UK's FTSE is also 0.2% lower.
The BFM Traffic Report.
The KL Seremban Highway is slow-moving from TODM towards the Sungai Besi Toll Plaza. On Jalan Istana, expect delays heading towards Jalan Tuanku Abdul Halim. I'm Nadir Rahmatrang. For more headlines, follow BFM News on Twitter. You're now up to date on BFM 89.9, the business station.
Inside Story on BFM 89.9.
Good evening. evening. You're with Lee Chui Lin, Sharmila Ganesan, and Sharat Kutan. Tonight, a new study has found that remote work does have a negative impact on younger or junior level employees, so we're diving into that.
First, we're going to discuss the study's findings as well as the role feedback plays in building a career and how that shifts depending on your seniority.
So, how important has feedback been in your career? What's the best or worst feedback you've ever received at work? Call 77332900, send us a voice note or WhatsApp 018-789-8899, tweet us at BFM Radio, and our U mobile number 018-789-8899. This is Inside Story.
Is 6:08. So our story today is based on an article from the New York Times which highlights major research conducted showing remote working having a negative impact specifically on younger or junior level employees. Now, this piece of research is actually among the first to look at the professional downside of remote work. It's called The Power of Proximity to Co-workers, if you want to look that up, and it was published by a group of economists who studied engineers at a tech company.
So the results are actually pretty interesting. They found that remote work enhanced the productivity of senior engineers, but it also reduced the amount of feedback that more junior employees were receiving, and that more junior engineers were more likely to quit the firm. And in terms of the effects of working remotely, this declining feedback was apparently more pronounced when it came to female employees. So the study's findings are specific to this particular industry. However, the authors are suggesting that the office did play an important role when it came to career development, particularly when it comes to this notion of how feedback helps you improve and elevate yourself in your career.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting that it was the study was based on engineers, right? So the question of how much, the processes or the wisdom of mentors are important in actually forming something in a very technical field. And you think that when it comes to other fields, it might get even more intense. When you think of journalism, where I grew up, the senior journalists who had a mind full of context and frameworks and questions to ask was essential for your development. And if you are at a remove, and it might be because of the physical remove that you are when working from home, you lose out on that.
Well, they're very basic things, right? Like rapport. Because I think that the way you give feedback, the way you give it, your willingness to give it, how often it's provided, a lot of that is also built on how comfortable you feel with another person. And that's, acknowledging that receiving feedback and providing feedback is a huge part of working in a team setting. It's something that you should reasonably be able to expect. But there is a huge difference between saying to somebody sitting next to you, hey, that was good. I think something else you could look at is blah, 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 versus writing a weekly email comprising what might be very substantive feedback, but, that's not necessarily the best way to communicate it, I would think.
And that's when things are positive, right? When we think about the type of feedback that could be more negative or more sort of critical, it feels even more likely that being remote puts certain barriers in terms of that communication. And I think it's particularly telling that we're talking about junior employees struggling with this more, because I think about, even for us, when we had a lot of our remote work, it felt like when I was talking to peers, it's a little bit easier because you're a lot more relaxed when it comes to, hey, I think this didn't go so well. What do you think the problem was? But when you're speaking to someone more junior, at least on my part, there was always an awareness that you needed to be a little bit more careful. You didn't want them to feel like you were being overly harsh, but at the same time, you did want to help them. And I imagine that on the other side of it, there's also a lot more hesitance in terms of perhaps pushing back or asking questions, or even perhaps trying to separate what is useful criticism and what might perhaps need a little bit more interrogation. I do think remote work can be helpful in so many ways, but I think it's these softer elements that can suffer if you're working entirely remotely.
Yeah, and we have those platforms to help with remote work, like the WhatsApp, group messages and all that, and you're right about tone, because I sometimes find myself, I want to check myself, because I think that a simple question I ask will be read by somebody who's less secure as a criticism, and I have to kind of like put in brackets or add an emoji to kind of soften the message, because you don't. But and it's also this other thing about being together and being in a constant discussion is that it sometimes in an unstructured situation, interesting things can emerge. And they don't emerge when it's much more directed at a certain objective. We got to show, we got to do this, this is what we want to achieve. But in the quiet moments, you might actually deliver something that somebody else, especially a younger person, finds valuable.
So, we are discussing a study that found that remote work had a negative impact on younger or junior level employees because of a lack of access to consistent feedback. And we are therefore asking you, how important has feedback been in your career? What is the best or worst feedback you ever received at work? We want to hear. You can call 7733-2900, send us a voice note at 018-789-8899 or a WhatsApp. You can also tweet us at BFM Radio. After this, we're going to be speaking with Asfa Amirzakri, co-founder at Work Inspires. Keep it here on Inside Story, BFM 89.9.
Many have asked if MyLife's claim of offering the cheapest life insurance for women is true. The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. And we're the cheapest for some men too. Check out the cheapest life insurance for women, guaranteed, on www.fi.life and use promo code BFM for 10% off your premium. Terms apply.
That's always the biggest challenge in running a festival, making sure that you are providing an experience that's worth the price ticket. At the same time, you've also got to be careful not to overspend on things that's unnecessary.
We didn't initially think to include that song on the EP, but we had then learned that we needed 5 songs to do an EP to sort of like qualify for recouping royalty and stuff like that.
All the music news you didn't know you needed. Top to the dash of music reviews, interviews, and fresh new music. Only on The Pulse, every Wednesday at 10 p.m.
Building first world Malaysia. BFM 89.9. The business station.
It's 6:15. You're listening to Inside Story with Lynn, Sharmila, and Sharad. We're basing our story today on a study that found remote working had a negative impact, or has a negative impact, on younger, junior level employees in particular. We are asking you, therefore, how important has feedback been in your career? What is the best or worst feedback you've ever received at work? You can call us 7733-2900, send a voice note to 018-789-8899, and tweet us at BFM Radio. Joining us now to talk about this is Asfa Amirzakri, co-founder at Work Inspires. Asfa, thanks for speaking with us today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So, like we said, we're talking about an article from the New York Times that highlighted that people who work remotely, particularly juniors, are missing out on valuable aspects of the in-office experience, including receiving feedback or being able to work more collaboratively. What have you observed in this regard, especially in the Malaysian context?
I think it's very important for us. Like, of course, there are certain things that's lacking, right? Like, if we're working remotely, there's no human interaction and etc. But it's also something that's very important as in Malaysia, we need that connectivity in Malaysia, right? Especially for working remotely, we don't have that connectivity, and maybe that is one of the biggest hindrance of something that's really lacking inside working remotely. So I totally agree. I think the most important thing that's lacking currently right now in terms of working remotely would be just the human interaction as in person, which is something that is very important in Malaysia.
So then what are some of the main challenges when it comes to giving and receiving feedback while working remotely?
I think the main challenges would be like, especially if you're working remotely, right? It's on the camera or having that human interaction is something that's missing. That's one. The second thing is people are not really comfortable in sharing more personal aspects of things virtually or working remotely. And I think the third point would be that if, let's say, for example, you're working remotely, it's very fast and just work-based. Right? There's not much of a personal aspect of it. We don't usually just hang out on the platforms just to just chat, but it's more towards just settling work. That's it. So I would say that would be the biggest challenges that would be in terms of giving or receiving feedback.
Aspa, are there particular groups who would benefit more for having that in-person experience, and and also people who don't? I mean, who would actually be quite okay with not having that in-person experience?
I mean, it depends, right? If you're talking in Malaysia, for my experience and also working with other companies and listening to them, in Malaysia it's quite hard because we are accustomed to meeting in person. We are accustomed to having, like, every time we're meetings we have to go to like Starbucks or a restaurant or a cafe to just meet up, right? So compared to other places, let's say for example like Japan or any other countries out there, they are already accustomed to having all of this work remotely kind of thing. So for them, maybe it is much easier, much better for them because they want things fast. But for us in Malaysia, it's quite hard because we are creatures of human interaction. So I would say for us in Malaysia, it might be hard, but for other countries, maybe it must be easier.
So, if I'm a junior who's working remotely at the moment, what could I be doing to ask for feedback more frequently? What would be constructive?
Okay, so for us, like for example, in some work areas, we have this framework called KISS: keep, improve, start, and stop. Right? I think before we do that, the framework is very important for us to set the setting for feedback, because especially inside, especially for a junior, if you want to receive or ask feedback from the supervisors or your seniors and everything like that, it's very ad hoc and it's not well planned. It's just like a random during tea breaks, or like for example during lunch you just ask feedback. It's like, hey, how can I improve or what can I be better in? Right? So that's one. I think the most important thing is to set a manage expectation and set a setting of saying like, okay, let's say for example this week, Mr. Supervisor or boss, can we have a feedback session in a particular time, in a particular day? And best to do it during working hours than after hours, because after hours is always more relaxed and casual. So that's one. And then the second thing is, once you already set the point to actually do or receive feedback, it's something that's very important to have a framework or a structure. Like what I mentioned in terms of KISS: keep, improve, start, and stop. So what are certain things that we need to keep? What are certain things that we need to improve? Or what are certain things that we need to start doing? Or what is the thing that we need to stop doing? So that's usually the case of, as a junior, having that structure and setting the tone is something that's very important.
And conversely, if I'm supervising junior employees who are working remotely, what are some things that I should keep in mind?
Honestly, for the other side would be having empathy. I think these days, especially if we're talking about remotely or whether it's in person, because of COVID, the level of empathy in the world is really, really reduced down, because it's just basically the separation and that gap that has been happening, right? So to keep in mind is to be very empathetic, and I would say, if let's say for example, in terms of generations or different, there is no connectivity, I would say be open and be understanding on their perspective. Maybe some people, I will always like to share this in terms of different generations. A baby, if first time you get cut, they will cry like crazy. But an adult, if they get a small cut, it's normal for them. So treat everyone like someone that is new, who have experienced it before. That's where you can give more empathy and understand them a bit more better.
So, do you think that the hybrid work model has addressed these issues, or has it presented its own set of challenges?
Definitely it set its own challenges in terms of this hybrid. Now, there's always pros and cons in everything, right? So hybrid working, like I mentioned, it is something that everybody wants, but sometimes it's on a personal agenda, right? Maybe because why hybrid working is something that a lot of people want inside Malaysia is because of the jam, right? So because of that, for them to travel, for them to don't need to go through the hassle of jam, they don't need to go through that pain. So that's why hybrid working is something that's beneficial. But the old challenges that's happening inside hybrid is that the level of trust and the level of micromanaging inside the organization itself. Whether can you rely on the person, whether this person is actually doing their work at home or wherever they are, or whether you can trust the person that this person can actually do the job.
So, in the study that we're referring to, the economists found that the benefits of in-person work apply only when an entire team is physically together. Do you agree?
I disagree on that. I honestly think that of course in-person is good, but at the end of the day, it depends on the team, right? As long as we understand and also know that work is work, and I would say fun is fun. It doesn't matter whether it's in person. Everybody needs to be together, and it be conducive or not. And for me, honestly, it's just it depends on the team.
So, despite all of these challenges that we've been talking about, many employees still would be working from home or hybrid arrangements. I mean, there are many surveys, for instance, the 2022 survey by PwC that showed that employees would prefer these. Do you think that ultimately the benefits of remote working still outweigh the negatives?
Yes, that is a very nice question, also spicy question, right? So for me personally, my opinion would be that it would definitely benefit more, because sometimes we are living in a world that there's a lot of things that's happening in personal life and also work life, right? So and we're talking about work-life balance. Hybrid working is one of the best way for us to have that work-life balance moving forward. But of course, they were, like I said, it's a double-edged sword also. Sometimes people do not know how to separate that work and also personal thing when we have this hybrid thing happening inside the country or also inside work. So that's something that is very important for us to know when we do hybrid working. Yes, there are benefits of it, like in terms of work-life balance, but also have a balance in both of them.
So finally, what could be some of the ways to better support employees who are working from home?
I think transparency is something that's very important to support employees, because for the employers, they want to see the work done, and of course they want to make sure that everything is there or when you are there, it's required to be there, you need to be there, right? But in terms of transparency for the employees, is that sometimes, yes, when we work from home or remotely for that matter, we have other things that it will be an interference, and being transparent is something that's very important for us to know. Like maybe for example, like okay, right now I am currently settling something. After this, I need to settle and after settling this personal issue, then I can actually handle the work and settle it as soon as possible. So having that transparency is something that's very important for employees, so that we all know that we all are all humans at the end of the day. So there will always be some ad hoc things that we need to settle if we have this hybrid working or working remotely. So being transparent is something that's good.
Asba, thanks for speaking with us today.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us, and have a great day, everyone.
That was Asfa Amizakri, co-founder at Work Inspires, and talking about the study that essentially found that, well, remote working did have its negatives, particularly for junior employees. And in light of that, we want to know, how important has feedback been in your career? What is the best or worst feedback you ever received at work? That number to call, 77332900. Send us a voice note, 018-789-8899, and tweet us at BFM Radio. Let's start off with a message that doesn't exactly answer our question, but it's from Munif, who says, Malaysian employers are generally a strange bunch. They'd rather workers slack off at the office than be productive in the comfort of their homes.
This is something that's come up a fair amount, right? In the time that when working from home wasn't a requirement but became an option, because we very quickly saw these questions of, oh, but I can't trust my employees. I'd rather they be here so I can watch them. And I largely feel like a lot of that really just means that we need to mature collectively in terms of trust and in terms of what we think of when we say productive employees.
Yeah, Asta actually did mention the question of the problem of trust or the lack of it in this instance. But I mean, to be fair to employers who might find themselves saddled with somebody who's going to game the system and take advantage of these new conveniences. I mean, they're set up to help people negotiate daily life, especially in cities where there are jams and such. And there was the pandemic as well. There must be some guarantees. So how do you build trust? I mean, it's something both sides. I mean, employees can't just demand it. You know,
Yes.
we need to find a way to bridge the gap between employees and employers on this question. How do you measure productivity when you're at home?
That, and actually trust is a good entry point to our point today about feedback, because of course, you know, you want to be able to take feedback in the spirit that it's offered in, but if you don't have trust, and this is not trust about productivity, but trust as a team or trust in your employer, then actually what is the spirit? How do you know?
Yeah, no,
You
I
know?
get it. Yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying about needing to establish that sort of relationship to begin with.
So tell us, how important has feedback been to you? What is the best or worst feedback you've ever received? You can call us, send us a voice note, as well as tweet us.
Meanwhile, something we have coming up. Are you passionate about getting the latest ideas and insights when it comes to getting higher conversions from customers, media strategy, innovation, and more? Find out how you can take your brand to the next level and build future marketeers with 24 brand building experts at the 18th BFM Brand Fest, happening on the 25th and 26th of July. Early bird tickets end on the 12th of May, Friday, so don't miss out. Head over to bfm.my/brandfest for more information.
I can't run my business like this, playing boss, salesman lah, accountant lah, all at the same time. Impossible!
Use Financial. Manage cash flow, automate accounting and inventory, plus they have in-app chat support.
Oh, what about tax filing? It's complicated.
With Financial, SST return is only a few clicks, boss. So easy!
Wow, that easy ah?
Yeah, let's try it for free today at financial.co. Financial, accounting made easy.
The news on BFM 89.9.
Here are the main stories at 6:30 p.m. Putrajaya has requested for a debate on the health white paper in the upcoming parliamentary meeting to get bipartisan support for healthcare reform. The Health Minister's Special Advisor, Dr. Kelvin Yee, told Cold Blue they want to learn from the failures of previous attempts for reform, including the proposed One Care system. The Bandar Kuching MP adds that if the debate is approved, the document proposing healthcare reform for over 15 years will likely go to a voice vote instead of a block vote. Separately, Professor Dr. Syed Muhammad Al-Junaid told BFM News a national health financing scheme may facilitate the cooperation between the public and private healthcare providers, especially during emergencies. The Malaysian Health Economic Association president adds that the private sector would eventually adapt to the scheme when it is implemented nationwide.
When we do not have enough ICU beds, it is not easy to get the private sector to send this patient to them because there's no mechanism in terms of method of payment. All this will not be a problem if we have a national health financing scheme. Our experience in Indonesia and also in Philippines, initially the private hospital may not want to participate because they thought that amount of the charges will be controlled by the government. But when 80-90% of the population are covered by this scheme, they wouldn't have patients if they are not actually in the scheme.
In Kelantan, the State Health Department has advised locals to limit their outdoor activities and only go out for imported matters after Met Malaysia issued a level 1 heat wave warning for the state. The department warns that a level 1 heat wave can lead to a heat stroke, with children and those with serious illnesses at high risk. The heat wave is expected to go on for 3 days starting yesterday, affecting Tanah Merah and Kuala Krai as well as Muka in Sarawak. In other news, Kutanyo Malaysia's International Director Lilian Fan describes the incidents where locals in Penang confronted Rohingya refugees at the Sri Bagan low-cost flats as a targeted xenophobic campaign. She told BFM this does not represent the perspective of all Malaysians towards the presence of asylum seekers here. She adds that high-ranking government officials must speak up on the matter.
There is concern, however, there hasn't been a public condemnation. And I think that that's very important because we shouldn't be tolerating this kind of hate speech against anyone. This is really not just about anti-Rohingya sentiment. It's actually about tolerating a kind of aggression towards any community. If we start to allow this to happen towards one community, we're basically saying it's okay for this kind of behavior to be conducted.
A 33-year-old woman suspected of sexually assaulting her 14-year-old son has been arrested again after being released from remand today. Police also detained a man in his 30s, believed to be the stepfather of the boy. Sungai Buloh police say a report was lodged by a 15-year-old girl over an incident that occurred at a hotel in January this year. Earlier, a video was forwarded to a social welfare department officer allegedly showing sexual acts between the woman and her teenage son. Briefly, Tan Sri Azam Baki has been reappointed as the MACC Chief Commissioner for another year, effective May 12th. In foreign news, New Zealand police have recovered the body of a boy killed during a school caving trip at the popular Abbey Caves complex. The teenager was part of a dozen students visiting the complex and had gone missing during heavy rainfall yesterday. The trip is now the subject of a comprehensive investigation, with many questioning why teachers had taken students to an area highly prone to flash floods. At the SEA Games, the national men's badminton team have qualified for their fourth consecutive final after defeating Thailand 3-2. Meanwhile, diver Lee Yat Ching marked her debut by winning the women's 10-meter platform competition. World Wushu champion Tan Cheong Min also won her first SEA Games gold medal in the women's Nanchuan event. In business news, Petronas Dahangan Berhad is expecting robust growth in its convenience sector in 2023, despite the segment recording a 24 million ringgit dip in profit last year. Its CEO Azwar Osman Rani says the decrease was due to the high operational expenditure, especially in the Settle platform and Mesra outlets.
There was a lot of investment in infrastructure. Those investments are what enable us to be able to service our customer, and because of the scale that we have, we are able to contain and maintain profitability element for year in, year out. So whenever you start something new, you do expect a slight dip, but we're very confident that as time goes well, all the other economic factors that starts to kick in, we will get more of our revenue share from our non-food business.
Separately, the Penang government will hold negotiations with Japanese airlines to conduct a feasibility study on direct connectivity between the state and Japanese cities. Penang Tourism Exco Yo Sun Hin says a new Penang-Japan flight path could contribute to the 16.1 million foreign arrivals in Malaysia this year, as targeted by the Tourism, Arts and Culture Ministry. Meanwhile, Telekom Malaysia has officially launched its new headquarters located at TM campus in Cyberjaya, having moved from the iconic Menara TM in Kuala Lumpur. The group says the new HQ offers a dynamic working environment with open spaces designed for hybrid working arrangements. And the Philippines digital wallet platform GCash says there was no funds lost in the wake of alleged unauthorized transactions that some users faced recently. The e-wallet service of Globe Telecom says its investigation showed that no hacking occurred. However, an unnamed Globe official told the Philippine Daily Inquirer that GCash stopped attempts by suspected hackers to siphon off over $600,000 from its clients after it detected a pattern of small withdrawals that were credited to 2 accounts at 2 banks. And Toyota has announced that its full-year net profit fell 14% to $18 billion, but is still beating its projections of $17 billion. The group expects its full-year net profit to increase 5% for the year ahead, in a sign that supply chain disruptions may be easing. In markets, the FBM KLCI closed down 0.5% at 1,426 points. European markets are negative, with Germany's DAX down 0.3%, while France's CAC is also 0.3% lower. And on the forex market, $1 is worth 4 ringgit 46 cent, while 1 Sing dollar is worth 3 ringgit 36.
The BFM traffic report.
The MRRT was backed up from Kapong heading towards Damansara due to a stalled lorry. Meanwhile, expect delays from Pulau Indah until North Port. I'm Danyana. For more headlines, follow BFM News on Twitter. You are now up to date on BFM 89.9, the business station.
This week on Tech Talk, Afiz Abdullah, Chief Enterprise Business Officer of Celcom DG, delves into the impact of 5G technology on the public sector. Afiz discusses how 5G is revolutionizing connectivity, enabling smart cities and enhancing public services, essentially helping the public sector in advancing societies. Discover how Celcom DG is driving innovation to shape the digital landscape and support the public sector in its transition towards digitalization. Tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. only on Tech Talk.
This Aura Good Cat really is more than you think.
Well, it's pretty. Some more?
It comes with a free home charger and portable charger.
Oh.
Up to 8 years warranty for the power battery and electric motor.
Go on.
1,000 ringgit charging credits.
Say no more. Get me one in each color.
The fully electric Aura Good Cat by GWM is more than you think. Enjoy your free home charger, 8-year warranty for the power battery, and 1,000 ringgit charging credits if you book by 31st May. More info at gwm.com.my.
There's something for everyone on the bigger picture.
As you age, I think not just your heart and your kidneys will go through the aging process, your skin definitely will go through the aging process. Your skin gets very thin. Your major proteins at the dermis, which is collagen and elastin, will also reduce, and that gives you the wrinkles and the sagging. And then, especially in Asian skin, you get pigmentation.
Tune in weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m. or download the podcasts on the BFM app.
Backplash, fracas, mayhem. BFM 89.9, the business station.
It is 6:39. You're listening to Inside Story with Lynn, Sharmila and Sharad. And together we're talking about the importance of feedback in your career. This came after a study found that one of the downsides of remote working, particularly for younger or junior employees, was that they simply weren't getting enough feedback. And so we're asking you, how important has feedback been in your career? And what is the best or worst feedback you ever received at work? That number to call is 7733-2900. You can send a voice note to 018-789-8899. You can also drop us a WhatsApp there and tweet us at BFM Radio. So before we get to the messages, I did want to kind of talk about it a little bit more, because earlier we were discussing the study and not so much talking about our own personal experiences with this. And I was thinking about how actually for a very long time for me, feedback was hard to take, and that's because I'm a recovering perfectionist, all sorts of stuff, you know, being raised eldest child, all sorts of things. Anyways, but it became such that I approached feedback, especially what's the formalized feedback sessions or periods every year with anxiety, and I think that ended up maybe affecting how I thought about feedback. And yet and then I was thinking about the question we're asking people, right, and whether I could isolate a single piece of advice, and I don't think I can, because I think the most valuable pieces of feedback that I've received have been constructive thoughts, or, you know, people kind of weighing in and bouncing off of ideas with you, because ultimately you just don't do good work in a vacuum. That's just a fact of life. I don't think anybody works at their best in an utter vacuum. I will continue to think about, you know, when someone has said something like really life-changingly helpful to me at work. But yeah, that's me. I'm increasingly, I hope, getting better at it, but the anxiety remains.
I don't know if I can isolate a piece of feedback, but I think I always go back to my early days in working for a newspaper, and how on those you know, you come into the job, especially if you were like an exemplar English student in school, which I was, thinking, oh, I wrote great essays and therefore I'm going to be great at being a journalist. And I remember that my editor at that time, she was very tough, but she was also so helpful, because essentially she would yell for me, and then I would know that the article I'd written was terrible, because she would yell for me, but then she would sit with me and go through the article I'd written line by line and say why this worked and why this didn't, why we should write it this way and why not that way, why headlines function this way. Hands down, best feedback process ever, right? And I'm not sure that that's something that could work, to bring it back to today's discussion, in a remote setting, because so much of it was very a very human interaction. It was also important for me to understand, even though she may be coming across as kind of impatient with me, that wasn't, that she was actually showing me care, that she was actually giving me her time. All of these things are things that are difficult to do in structured feedback sessions that you might set a Zoom call for.
Do you take criticism from members of the audience, listeners, readers, as criticism? Do you take it seriously? Because if I was to think about criticism, my mind often goes to the people who criticize my writing. I remember one time there was this
feedback. So I think it's interesting that you're using the word criticize, because actually we're talking about feedback, which can be positive and negative.
Well, the positive feedback, often it's just like water rolling off the duck's back. You're happy for about 2 seconds, and that's
the
it.
negative
right?
stuff sticks. Yeah, I agree.
It's the negative stuff that sticks. And I remember I worked for the Sun newspaper, and there was a column for feminists, and one of those feminists didn't write her piece. So then my editor said, Sharad, you've got a day to turn this around and fill this space up. And I wrote something in a column for feminists talking about how to redeem male culture. And one of the feminists called me a piece of dog excrement. And I must say, it was something I remember for a long time, because I realized that, one, there are people reading, and two, that what you think is a reasonable argument might not be. And so, how do you think about how other people are going to receive your ideas? And I have had many more dog excrement moments, I can tell you that.
Well, that's us. We want to know from you, how important has feedback been for you? And actually the question of manner of delivery is also an interesting one, right? Like, how do you best receive feedback? And if you want to share what's the maybe best or worst feedback you have ever received in the workplace, that number to call is 77332900. You can send a voice note to 018-789-8899 or drop us a WhatsApp and tweet us at BFM Radio. So we do have a voice note that came in. This is Dylan.
Hello. I think for me, in terms of the feedback perspective in working remotely, one of the something that I always have to be mindful would be that who am I talking to at the moment, right? Because when we are working remotely, sometimes that now I'm working with the Malaysians, but sometimes I'm actually working with someone else abroad or come from different culture, different understanding. So very often that the subjective perception of certain meaning could be different from one place to another place, right? I take you for example, even a Chinese from Malaysia versus Singapore, we speak the same language, but certain extent the culture and the style could be different. So one of the feedback also sometimes is that when I now have to work with our local Malaysian, people would always label me that I think you are very, different, right? So I know what that means. Sometimes I could be too direct, for example, but sometimes I can be a bit more soft side. So when we work remotely, we just have to be mindful sometimes where we are right now, who we are talking to, and be a bit more on empathy to a certain extent. It could be very helpful.
Dylan, thank you so much for that. I think that there's a lot in there that's interesting, particularly in terms of speaking to different people at different times, in different contexts. And truthfully, I'm in the position of providing feedback quite often, and I did find that doing it while working remotely is tiring, partly because of that tone, which we talked about earlier as well, having to deliver feedback in a written form, or not being able, even through video, and not being able to rely on reading the vibe of the room or how the other person might be responding. All of that really adds up.
No, absolutely. I think that when you're in the position of giving feedback, it is actually so important to think about how that feedback is going to be received. Now, that doesn't mean you have to pull back on the thing you're trying to say, but obviously you are in a position of power or being above the person. And so empathy, I think, is always a good thing to keep in mind.
Okay, so I don't want to raise the boomer, and generational difference argument, but is there one in terms of this question? Because the study seems to focus on young people missing out on a particular experience with regard to the workplace, and that's got to do with mentoring and their relationship with older, more senior people, right? So has something shifted in the way people think about criticism? Are they more empowered? Do they say, okay, you have your point of view, I have my point of view, which can be quite annoying, I must say. Or are they, as people accuse them of being snowflakes and therefore much less willing to take a criticism?
Can I pull it back even further than that and say that I think the generational difference might be in the willingness to even ask for the feedback or criticism or whatever. And I think that might come from,
The newer generations are more willing?
No, I think that we're a texting generation. And so the people who in the past would have picked up a phone and just called you and said, hey, listen, let's talk. I don't think your work's very good, or that kind of thing. That sense of directness is not always present. And so aside from how one takes feedback, if we look at the study, the other thing that they talk about is how you ask for it or how often you receive it. And I think the generational gap there is very present because you might, I don't know, I'm just thinking me and up, down? What am I trying to say? Who's younger? Down? Down, yes. From me down, meaning people who are in their 20s, I'm not sure how many people are like actually out there, trying to constantly seek it out.
So texting, and then I would also add to that actually the internet. And I want to say, what I'm saying is not at all a bad thing. I think we are now operating with a generation of younger people who are more empowered to say, I don't deserve to be treated that way. And I think that's a good thing. Because I think even when I first started working, there was the sense that you needed this job, whatever your boss would say to you, however they might deliver that message or feedback, you need that job. Take it.
Does that then go too far into the direction of I don't deserve to be spoken to that way, even if it's legitimate criticism delivered politely?
That's, I think, where it becomes a little grey, right? And that's where the accusations of snowflake generation and all that comes about, because they're like, oh, everything we say you take as like criticism. So I think there is some complexity there. I do think though that the truth is that whenever you're the junior employee, it's never the same as asking for or receiving feedback from someone that's compared to a peer-to-peer situation.
I want to quote Baudelaire, but I can't quite remember the lines. But sorry, he has this line about what a true friend is, and a true friend is somebody who kind of, forces you to kind of live up to your better self, right? And I think in a mentoring situation, that's what you want. So on one part, there is the older person saying, I want to help you become your better self. And the other is the eagerness on the part of the younger person to learn, who sees criticism as essential to their personal growth and not an attack on their person. And that is a distinction that
and it shouldn't be an attack on the person, which is the thing the person giving the feedback should know.
Right. It's receiving it. It's perceived as an attack on that person, not as an essential part of your professional growth. And people can't make that distinction, I think. Maybe they never could. And, some people just don't survive, and a lot of people have withered on the vine, but, and then some of us became more resilient and just learned until we got to the point where we could be dishing it out, as it were. No, I'm just kidding.
Perhaps no one noticed, but I've been silent for a while because I've been trying to find this friendship code and I can't find it. So I don't know.
I'm not making it up. I know I've dropped a big. I know I dropped a big name there.
Yeah,
it's not for effect.
I've tried Baudelaire, True Friend, Baudelaire, Friendship Code. Not coming up yet. We'll find it. Anyways, we are talking to you and asking how important has feedback been in your career, and do you have a preference for how you take it?
I love being fact checked on air. I love this.
No,
this is what you get on BFM. You get nothing goes
even the presenters
get fact checked.
It sounded wise. I wanted everybody to know it, but I can't find it. Anyway, how important has feedback been in your career? What is the best or worst feedback you've ever received at work? You can call 7733-2900, send a voice note to 018-789-8899, and tweet us at BFM Radio.
Con calls or laugh calls. Ciao, file sharing or out hopping. Sawadee ka. Workshops or just stops. Konnichiwa.
Be it business or leisure, experience seamless connectivity even when abroad with free global roaming and incoming calls in 63 destinations. Get U-Mobile's unbeatable U-Biz plan today. Find out more at u.com.my/business.
BFM Brand Fest is back to take you and your brand to the next level, where 24 brand building experts will share the latest ideas, insights and information about getting higher conversions from customers, media strategy, fuel growth by innovation, ChatGPT and more. Join us at the 18th BFM Brand Fest happening on the 25th and 26th of July. For more details, head over to bfm.my/brandfest.
Best for marketing. BFM 89.9.
It is 6:52. You're listening to Inside Story with Lynn, Sharmila and Sharad. We're talking today about the importance of feedback in the workplace. We'd like to hear from you. How important is feedback to you? What is the best or worst feedback you've ever received in your workplace? That number to call is 7733-2900. You can send a voice note or WhatsApp 018-789-8899. Tweet us at BFM Radio. We're talking about this because a new study has found that remote work did or does have a negative impact on junior employees, particularly because they don't receive enough feedback. Hence why we're trying to talk about that very issue. Now we do have a voice note that's come in. This is from Saiful.
As a father of 4 teenagers and young adults, and on top of that, I'm a boss of my own company. Giving feedback is not an easy thing because sometimes people are or employees, sometimes they are very sensitive on what you're talking about. But I found a trick. It's a trick that I always use, and kind of having a good back to me is that, and they will appreciate the feedback. Is I always highlight what is the problem, why it is a problem, and how to fix the problem. For example, if the employee coming late, always late to this to come to the office, I highlight to him that what's the problem is right now is going to be late, and why is problem because sometimes customer want to come early and then there's nobody attending, and how to fix the problem, just adjust the timing or wake up early or something like that. And by doing that, they can take the feedback quite okay lah. But I do have some experience when the employees fighting back, saying those are not their problem, but that's hustle and bustle of being a boss. What to do?
Saiful, what to do instead? What to do indeed. I mean, I think that if you try your best to provide proper feedback after that, really, what to do?
Well, you know, a lot of people are sharing feedback that they received that was helpful, and it's really quite nice, I think, to see the number of people who have found this useful in their line. So we have, an anonymous listener who says, best advice at work I received was when I started as a business journalist. One of the editors told me, these first 2 years, make as many mistakes as you can. After that, no more. On hindsight, 2 years might be a bit long, but I think the gist of the advice is to not let fear keep you from taking chances, and if you do make mistakes, learn from it.
Yeah, I think with journalism, there's enough checks and balances, gatekeeping that goes on, so that you don't end up doing damage to your organization, right? They'll catch it, and yes, there was a generation where the newsroom was a very harsh place, and you really had to be tough. I mean, Shamla, you know this. You worked in the newsroom, and but it wasn't necessarily bad. I think looking back, I think this is the wisdom of hindsight, where you look back and you think, oh, I learned so much during those days.
I don't want to do the whole, they treated me badly, but I learned a lot. There were equal number of people who I think could have behaved much better.
There's no excuse for bad behavior.
But there were also, yes, things that were difficult when they were happening to me, but in retrospect, I realized helped me learn. So yeah, I think that happens in many spaces.
So when we've been talking about feedback and its use, right? Its facilities. So Roberto says, I've never imagined in my entire almost 30 over years of work that one of my managers would be capable of telling me it has been very challenging to work with you. It was really shocking to listen to. It didn't even tell me how to improve, in what area, what to change. Just like that. It was so frustrating.
Oh, that's tough, isn't it? I mean, and it goes against Saiful's maxim of stating the problem, but also what the impact is. Instead, this just seems like an attack. Like it doesn't help.
Yeah, no, one thing we all have to realize is that, I mean, I always find this, my perception and my memory of interactions are always so benign and happy. And I think, and then when somebody comes back to me and says, oh, you were harsh and critical and so on and so forth, it's a real shock to me, because in my mind, it was a very happy place.
Like, remember that time you quoted Baudelaire and I was actually deeply hurt
like
by
just 5 minutes
it
ago.
and let down.
It's just 5 minutes, kids. I will find the quote for you. Don't worry.
We'll come back with that later, because at this point,
if I don't find it, I've just lost my job, I think.
It's a live on-air unsolvable mystery at this point. We haven't found it yet. Okay, Munir says, my boss saw me staying back late one evening and said to me, wow, first time I see you busy, huh? A seemingly harmless jibe, if not for the fact that I stayed at the office for 3 days to submit a 700-plus drawing proposal for the company just a day ago, all in a day's work in this thankless industry. And maybe this is not so much about feedback, but in many ways about the manner, right, with which we speak to people.
The manner and how, when you are in a superior position, that a lot of things that you say that to you might seem just a joke can often be perceived very differently by your employee.
So, let us know what you think, or rather share with us, how important has feedback been to you in your work? In general, do you find it very valuable? And what is the best or worst feedback you've ever received? You can call us 7733-2900. You can send a voice note to 018-789-8899. It is the same number to drop us a WhatsApp. You can tweet us at BFM Radio. We'll be back for all the messages that are continuing to come in. Keep it here on Inside Story, BFM 89.9.
Are you on the Ultra experience? Thanks to Unify, ultra-fast internet is now available across Malaysia. Get aggregated bandwidth of up to 2 gigabits. No more lagging when you and your family are on the internet. Best thing is, Unify offers next-day installation for this package. Get the Ultra experience today, only with Unify. Visit unify.com.my/ultra. Cyber threats is one of the nation's most serious economic and security challenges. To ensure better cyber safety, we need cybersecurity training and certifications. Cybersecurity Malaysia's Information Security Certification Body provides product management systems as well as professional certifications, preparing you for any cyber threats. Details about ISCB certification programs at cybercasa.cybersecurity.my. Cybersecurity Malaysia, an agency under the Ministry of Communications and Digital.
The news on BFM 89.9.
Here are the main stories at 7 p.m. The Works Ministry confirms that a total of 12 highway concessionaires have agreed to implement the open payment system for tolls, including for the North-South Expressway. The system is expected to be fully operational in September, while a dry run session will be held in July. The other highways include the LDP, Sprint, Kesas, Smart Tunnel, and the Penang Bridge. In Negeri Sembilan, property owners operating homestays in the state may need to apply for a license soon as part of efforts to regulate the homestay business in the state. The Negeri Sembilan government is considering asking local councils to put such properties under a special category, as well as requiring owners to pay a higher assessment. Separately, independent business writer P. Gunasegaram says companies may not be able to cope with the proposal by a workers' union to increase employers' EPF contribution to 20%. He told BFM that this proposal highlights a more severe problem involving low wages.
Low wages. Successive EPF heads have identified this as the main problem why EPF retirement savings are inadequate. So you can have all kinds of tiered systems, but if you do not address the underlying problem, things are not going to work. You need to give workers fairer salaries. You have to find ways and means of increasing worker productivity, things like better education and training.
In other news, past leader Nasruddin Hassan has urged Putrajaya to cancel Coldplay's concert, which is set to take place in November, claiming that it does not benefit the country or the people. Nasruddin shared photographs of Coldplay frontman Chris Martin holding up a rainbow flag at a concert and questioned if the government was trying to spread hedonism and deviant culture. In Pahang, the state government assures that it does not plan to increase quit rent over the next 5 years, despite targeting an annual increase in revenue collection. The Pahang government explains that other measures will be implemented instead, including through recurring revenue collection. At the KL Sessions Court, former Malaysia Automotive, Robotics and Internet of Things Institute CEO Dr. Muhammad Madani has claimed trial to 9 money laundering charges, amounting to 4 million ringgit. Madani is alleged to have used some 3 million in illegal proceeds to purchase Islamic redeemable preference shares and to pay legal fees. He also allegedly gave instructions to pay 750,000 ringgit in different transactions to 2 individuals, a law firm and a company. And Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has reiterated his call for the establishment of an Asian Monetary Fund to enhance the region's economic independence and safety net.
I welcome the ASEAN leaders' declaration on advancing regional payment connectivity and promoting local currency transactions, as it would enhance the use of local currencies to support cross-border trade investment in ASEAN. Following this initiative to enhance the region's regional economic independence and safety net, I've called for the establishment of an Asian Monetary Fund.
In foreign news, the US have returned 2 7th century antiquities which were stolen from China. The stone carvings, which is currently valued at $3.5 million, had been sawn off a tomb by thieves in the early 1990s and smuggled out of China. Meanwhile, Chinese authorities have detained a man for using ChatGPT to write fake news articles, including a piece about a train crash that purportedly left 9 people dead. Further investigations revealed that the man used the technology to modify viral news articles, which he would then repost. At the SEA Games, 15-year-old Ng Jing Chuan delivered a historic first for Malaysia after securing the gold in the women's individual golf competition, defeating Thailand. Another Malaysian, Fung Zi Yu, claimed the bronze medal. Malcolm Ting also took silver for Malaysia in the men's individual competition behind Vietnam. In football, Barcelona announced that midfielder Sergio Busquets will leave the club at the end of this season, after spending 18 years with the Catalan outfit. In business news, DXN Holdings Berhad says its decision to relist on Bursa Malaysia's main market next week is to help build the company's profile and enhance its PR among stakeholders. CEO Teo Hang Ching also clarifies that the health and wellness products maker delisted in 2011 to restructure its operations.
The main reason for us to privatize was to focus on our core business of direct selling. And by now, we have successfully done that. And over the years, a lot of achievements. You see now, we are already at the top among the top key players. And we are still far from them in terms of profiling. Profiling in the sense that to promote the competitive edge of the company.
UOB Malaysia posted a lower net profit of 1.3 billion ringgit last year, down 13% from the previous year, largely due to a one-off expense incurred from acquiring the consumer banking business of Citigroup in the country. The bank says its total operating income rose by 15% to 3.9 billion ringgit last year, mainly driven by stronger non-interest income and net interest income. Elsewhere, Wedbush Securities Managing Director Dan Ives claims that technology is the new safety sector as recession looms the United States economy, and considering the bullish condition of tech stocks. He also told BFM that the industry will likely continue to use AI as a leverage for monetization.
AI is a Game of Thrones playing out. Microsoft's clearly leading on ChatGPT. Google is close behind, and obviously it's a big focus for them. And then, of course, you look at names like Apple, Meta. In our estimate, it's an $800 billion market opportunity in the next decade.
Axiata Group Berhad plans to accelerate value creation through its 2 Indonesian operating companies, XL Axiata and LinkNet. The group is confident that delayering its Indonesian assets would provide investors with separate and segmented access to Indonesia's fixed mobile convergence and fixed broadband markets. And Malaysia's wholesale and retail trade volume index rose 9.5% year-on-year in the first quarter, thanks to the increase in the retail trade subsector, followed by motor vehicles and wholesale trade. In markets, the FBM KLCI closed down 0.5% at 1,426 points. European markets are higher, with Germany's DAX down 0.2%, while France's CAC is also 0.2% lower. In key commodities, Brent crude oil prices fell 1.1% at $76.59 a barrel. And CPO futures plunged 2.6% at 3,709 ringgit per metric ton.
The BFM traffic report.
A trailer on fire is causing delays on the NKVE from Setia Alam until Shah Alam. Meanwhile, the Dungkil bypass is slow moving from Cyberjaya until Dungkil town. I'm Danyanaya. For more headlines, follow BFM News on Twitter. You are now up to date on BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good evening, you're with Lynn, Sharmila and Sharad. We are continuing our conversation now on the importance of feedback at work.
And then on Popcorn Culture, review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Indeed. Send your thoughts through. You can call 77332900, tweet us at BFM Radio, send us a voice note or WhatsApp at our U mobile number 018-789-8899.
It is 7:08, and you're listening to Inside Story with Lynn, Sharmila, and Sharad. We are talking today about. Okay, let me start by recapping the study, because our entire show today is based on a study that found remote working does have a negative impact, particularly on younger and junior level employees, because they don't have what the study is calling the power of proximity, and that enables them to get feedback, to actually have their seniors speak to them.
Another new SUV this week, this time by Subaru. They just revealed the all-new 2023 Subaru Forester in 4 new trim levels. Comes with quite a hefty price increase. Let's look at it, Danny.
I looked at this and said to myself, Subaru has been doing so well in the past decade, and sales have been good. You can see where I'm going with this. But with this latest version, it doesn't look all new. The profile of the vehicle is still the same. The lights have changed, the grille, the low bumper, the diffuser kit, the frames. But it's essentially the previous Subaru. It's more like a facelift. Yes, they've added better safety features, and Subaru eyesight features are fantastic. They're one of the best in the market. But again, I would have wanted something totally new. Something that says, "Whoa, I'm driving a new Forester." And that's the problem, because a lot of people go in the showroom and they'll say, "This is really look different." And then if they buy it, the neighbors say, "Hey, we didn't buy a new car." This is the problem,
Yeah. So
it is a new car. I spent an extra 20,000 ringgit on it. Of course, it's new.
So the price has gone up, like you said, about 20,000 ringgit, but they've got added features, some new looks here and there, front, back, and everything else. But they could have done a lot more. And I think the problem is with Subaru, they're not a huge Japanese car company. They're a very modest car company. They don't have factories all over the place, but they have a commanding sales presence in America, Australia, New Zealand, and of course Malaysia. They're not big in Indonesia at all. They're not big in Thailand. They do quite well in Taiwan. But they've got some markets where they're okay, some markets where they're not okay. So they're not big global player like Honda and Toyota and Mazda. So I think because of that, they tend to be a little bit complacent in terms of design language, but they never fail to produce boxer engines, and the symmetrical all-wheel drive system is still class-leading. So we'll give them all that. So price-wise, from 173,500 to 195,000. Now, in the case of this price, here I think a lot of people are actually going to get lower price version, because once you go to 195,500, you're too close to 200,000. And when you're close to 200,000, the competition is just crazy. You know what I mean? And you've also got the grey market to worry about, because the grey market is making all these smaller SUVs, and the prices are about this. Maybe it's 1 year old, but people still say, hey, I'm getting something that no premium. Right. So I think Subaru has got their pricing issue to think about, and also they've got to go back and talk to customers.
So specs is for 173,500, and just for comparison, the 2019 Forester, which still looks kind of new, the top spec is just a little lower than 160,000. So as we mentioned, the Subaru Forester 2-liter engine, all-wheel drive, and it now comes with EyeSight 4.0, which is essentially an extra pair of eyes to assist drivers. They've got this thing called the autonomous emergency steering, Richard. It helps steer your car away from obstacle, even if you're going up to 80 kilometers per hour. So yeah, really smart car, producing 196 PS and 196 Newton meters of torque with a 7-speed CVT, and that's the new Subaru Forester 2023. Up next, another SUV, this time an electrified SUV. Recently at the Malaysia Auto Show 2023, BMW unveiled another I-Series electric SAV. It's not an SUV, it's a sports activity vehicle. It's called the iX1 xDrive 30 M Sport.
That's a mouthful, huh?
Just a little bit. Tell us about it then.
So this is BMW's latest entry-level SAV. Now, SAV means sports activity vehicle. BMW does not like to use the word SUV. SUV, sports utility vehicle, they say let everybody else use it. We will use the word SAV. I remember more than a decade ago going overseas for the launch of the first ever SAV, which was the BMW X3, and they kept going on and on about SAV, SUV, SKV, SKF, whatever, but they've kept to that name and they've kept to that profile. Why do they say it? Because they say that even though it's a high-riding vehicle, it's a family vehicle, it's an off-road vehicle, it's still very, very sporty. Okay, so that's fine with them. Now, this latest version comes with a bit of a disappointment in terms of pricing, and I'll tell you why. It's almost 80,000 ringgit more than the outgoing model. Now, a lot of people, yeah, exactly. A lot of people are going to say, why 80,000 ringgit more? So don't get upset when you hear the number 80,000. There is a reason why BMW raised the price. Now, this, of course, now is a plug-in hybrid. So plug-in hybrid, electrified version, you got a lot more electronics and features and everything else. The previous version was local assembled and it was a run-out model. That is why it was 208,000 compared to this now 285,000. Actually, the difference is 77,000. And then you've got a lot more features. You got the new infotainment screen. You got more connectivity, and of course the car has got much more power. This vehicle now with this plug-in hybrid powertrain is giving you out 313 horsepower, 494 Newton meters of torque. That is when the battery and the engine is working together. That means a 0 to 100 is 5.6 seconds. It's a real SUV.
Okay, wow.
Okay, you put all this together, then you say, I don't mind getting this electrified version. So BMW is targeting a very niche market. A lot of people are going to say, hey, it's a bit expensive, but then BMW is BMW. They're not selling you something mediocre or something not really premium. On top of that, they give you a 5-year unlimited mileage warranty, 8 years or 160,000 kilometer battery warranty, and they give you, of course, roadside assistance and everything else. So buying this SAV has its benefits if you're really going to go all out there.
Now on to one last EV of the week. We just welcome a new EV on the block. This time a company called Neta V. And they've launched a touchable smart EV, also announced at the Malaysia Auto Show recently. It will soon be available in Malaysia. This one is an EV designed for Malaysian drivers, and it comes at a very attractive price.
Well, the launch price was just under 100,000 ringgit, but immediately they offered a 10,000 discount to consumers at the show, which I think will stay on for quite a while. This is for the first 100 cars, but I think they'll stay for quite a while, because that brings it down to 89,000 now. In April this year, earlier this year, I actually guessed the price at 89,000.
Oh, well done.
Well done.
Right on the money, dude. Right on the money. So anyway, a lot of people, when I guessed the price, said, "Oh, too expensive," because, and I'll tell you why. This car was launched. It's not a big car. It's about the size of the Myvi, okay? But sitting a bit taller, maybe a bit longer. It's a small compact city car. It's got a small battery, 95 PS, 160 Newton meters of torque. It'll do about 100 kilometers an hour top speed. So a lot of people say, "Oh, why so slow?" You don't need to go faster than that, because why? Your top speed is 110. The battery range claimed is 380 kilometers, but normally when they do claimed, take away 20% to be safe. So you're looking about 300, 320. So that's about the same range as you get with a Nissan Leaf. Now the Nissan Leaf is about 160,000. This is 90,000 ringgit. Now a lot of people are going to say great value, great car, everything fantastic. Now this Neta comes from a company called Hozon, H-O-Z-O-N in China. Now Hozon is a reasonably big company, but they're quite a new company. So my worry is this new Chinese startups, when they build electric cars, they get a Malaysian distributor, they get a Thai distributor, Indonesian distributor, they pump, they bring this vehicle in, it's got, like, is it touchscreen, you got, a lot of wonderful features inside, you got a nice battery, but what about replacement parts? What about replacement batteries when you need it? This is my little worry, because unlike BYD and Great Wall and Chery, which are long established companies, this is a relatively new Chinese electric car company.
2014 from what I'm reading, yeah.
Yes. On top of that, that price is really good. However, in Thailand, when they launched it a few months ago, it was launched at 549,000 baht, which at today's exchange rate is just below 70,000 ringgit.
Oh.
So that is why I managed to guess the price at 89,000, putting in all the after sales and warranty and everything else. But still, how did they get the price so low in Thailand? Because in Thailand also, they'll be offering after sales, warranty, and servicing, Electric cars are now tax-free in Malaysia. So by right, it should be very close to the Malaysian price. But never mind, maybe they've got some special incentive in Thailand which they hooked onto, because the company Neta the company Hozon, is making Thailand one of their hubs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Thai government could have given them some really good incentives. Yeah. So they're putting up a full plant just outside Bangkok, which will be the main manufacturing base for building right-hand drive Netas for the ASEAN region, including Malaysia.
Very interesting.
Right.
But their target is 20,000 units a year just for Malaysia and Thailand.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious. And if they actually achieve it, it could actually mean the price coming down.
Right. Okay, I mean, if the price is coming down 89,000, well, the price is at 89,000, if it does come down anymore, how do you see people buying this though, Daniel?
For people to walk into the Malaysian Auto Show to buy this for 89,000 ringgit. Now the Malaysian Auto Show had a lot of EVs there. All the other brands were there, all whether from premium, non-premium, mid-range and whatever else. Now for them to rush and buy this, from what I understand, this car took the highest number of sales per day. Okay.
Oh wow.
So that means there's a lot of consumers out there who can't afford big EVs. Like we said before, the magical price was below 100,000, right?
Yeah.
So the 160,000, 168, 169,000 cars like BYD and Bora Good Cat, which have been doing very well. They've sold up to 1,000 units for certain models. Doing well, delivering is going on as we speak. But there's another group of people who wanted electric cars below 100,000. Now they're not really doing enough research to check whether can I live with this car for 8 years. That's number one. Number two, if I'm living in government housing, do I have charging facilities? Because this vehicle has only got realistically about 300 kilometers range. Now, if you're living in a house You won't have a wall box. You'll be using a normal plug point. Now, a normal plug point will take 6 to 8 hours to charge from 30 to 80%. Now, if you use DC fast charging, of course faster, but DC fast charging costs money. If you're buying something like this, you don't have money for DC fast charging, and you wouldn't want to be using DC fast charging unless you're going outstation on a trip. So when you take all these factors into consideration, and then on top of that, this is not a very big vehicle. So if you overload it, you're going to stress out the battery and the motor. So you have to consider all this. And then the car weighs only, this is surprising, the car weighs only just 1.1 tons, 1,151 kilos. Now, that tells me that it's not using a very big battery, because the larger EV cars, they're all 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 tons. And most of the weight is coming from the battery. So if you're not using a very big battery, that means the density is not great. How long will the battery last?
Well, interesting. Do they have battery replacement features for afterwards, after sales?
Well, that's the thing. They're not highlighted. They're after sales, they're centers, their battery costs, you know, if you have to replace the battery. But a lot of manufacturers are very hesitant to even share that. So, Hozon, to me, okay, new company, they've been around, they're building cars, but are they there to stay, you know? Putting up a factory in Bangkok sounds good, but, you know, I want to see the gong being hit, and then, okay, production starts, you know?
Okay, shall we take a short break?
Sure.
Are we done with SUVs?
Definitely.
Yes, we're done with SUVs. Ooh. Okay, folks, we're going to take a short break, and when we do come back, we have the exclusive interview with Shell Malaysia on Shell Fuel Save 95. Stick around, of course, we'll be right back with that information. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Cruise Control, the car show here on BFM 89.9.
Sustainability is a topic that transcends borders, but it's in Kuala Lumpur that we will be charting pathways for sustainable Asia. This 26th to 28th June, Energy Asia 2023 is bringing together Asia's leaders from public and private sectors to advance actionable solutions for a just energy transition and meet the region's net zero carbon emission targets. Register as a delegate now at officialenergyasia.com. Energy Asia is brought to you by Petronas.
So Dad, I'm thinking of becoming a film critic or maybe a documentary filmmaker in the future.
What? Nonsense like you. Can you choose something more normal, like something science-based?
Oh, yes, maybe I can become a conservationist instead and help preserve coral reefs.
Huh? What's that? Can make money or not first? On Redefining Success, we speak to passionate and brilliant people from various fields about their careers. And yes, we do ask them, hey, can make money? Every alternate Fridays at 3 p.m. only on BFM 89.9.
Bilingual, friendly Malaysian. BFM 89.9, the business station.
BFM 89.9, the business station. Welcome back to Cruise Control. We're into part 2 of the show, and as promised, we're going to be speaking to Shell Asia's Mobility Division General Manager. It is Li Ming, and she's going to be telling us all we need to know about a new and improved edition of Shell's Fuel Save 195. Ali Johan got the loading.
Let's get straight into it. The story behind this new and improved Shell Fuel Save 95. How long has this been in the works?
We launched this product on the 8th of February, and as you know, Shell is one of the biggest fuel retailer globally. We have more than 45,000 stations and servicing 30 million customers every day. And one of our mission is how do we actually power progress for our customer, and how do we make their life journeys better. And hence, when we launched this new and improved Shell Fuel Save 95, it has provided the benefit of up to 15 kilometer longer per tank, and something is very welcome to the Malaysian consumer.
Yes, that claim, it excited us at Cruise Control because Daniel Fernandez, he loves it when petrol can take you further. So you guys have injected a new generation deposit targeting technology. What is it, and tell me more about this?
Yeah, before I talk about maybe deposit targeting technology, because this we launch a product every 5 years, and it went through a very extensive research and development with about close to 150 fuel scientists globally is a lot of R&D work over the course of 5 years that we come back and continue to innovate to provide a product benefit to our customer. And this new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95 with the deposit targeting technology could actually capture some of the carbon deposit that build over the time when the engine is running. So you can imagine fuel economy to the engine is very, very important. And that's where when the engine is new, is clean, everything works perfectly. Just imagine you are taking a shower. If your shower head is actually clogged up by those lime scale that build over the time, and then your shower will not work effectively. So similar to car engine as well. So as the car engine is running, carbon deposit will build over time. And with this deposit targeted technology, we actually go after the performance robbing deposit and how do we actually clean and protect our engine. And it is able to clean up to 65% of all the deposit built in the fuel injectors as well as all the fuel intake valves. It keeps the engine clean and actually remove the carbon deposit and ensure that no future new deposit build up, which means zero build up of carbon deposit if you continue to use our new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95.
So every time we refuel, it's going to clean up the engine from those deposits that's sticking to the walls.
Just imagine it's like a scotch tape.
Sure.
Or a lint roller that will actually roll and clean up your old deposit that is stuck into your fuel injector and your valves. And then as your engine run with the fuels, it continue to cleanse and actually reduce all the deposit build up and make sure that your engine run efficiently. Part of the internal combustion engine, so you need fuels and air intake to actually combust the engine to drive the engine forward. So when the combustion happens, there will be deposit builds up. It will make your engine less efficient. The new engine will work better, whereas the older engine, as carbon deposit build up, it will clog up your engine if you do not use quality fuels and the product. So it is important that you use a new technology, and hence we come up with the new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95 that actually prove to consumer that how this new product and formulation can actually help to clean your engine and drive fuel efficiency.
Yeah, that's excellent, because also as we know, many cars use RON 95 and motorbikes as well, right? But now we come on to the claim that the new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95 can give consumers up to 15 kilometers longer per tank. How are we proving this is, I guess, the question here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Thanks for your question, because when we launched the product in a social media, and actually they asked me, is it a marketing gimmick? So to actually prove what we say is true, we actually launched the new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95 Challenge 2023. So we encourage fellow Malaysians to actually use our product up to 100-kilometer journey. We have 5 regions that compete, so we just recently crowned 5 regional winner in each region, and that 5 winner, the result for 5 regions is really amazing. On average, they clock in about 27.8 kilometer per liter, and it's amazing result. And then these 5 regional winner will actually compete at a national level. They're given the same car, which is the new Honda City, the Shell Fuel Safe 95, as well as the journey that they have to drive is a 100-kilometer journey, and who clocked the highest mileage will actually take away 20,000 cash.
I imagine this race to be very slow and relaxed, right? Because you have to conserve your fuel, and it's like nobody's rushing to the finish line at all.
No, I don't think it's going to be slow. It has to be like a normal driving, because we would just want to test the real road condition, driving behavior on the ground. But the result is really amazing. From what we go out there saying that 50 kilometer longer per tank, and a lot of the consumers who use our product can testify that it is more than that.
Say I haven't been using the Fuel Safe 95 RON 95 fuel by Shell, and say I've been having a build-up of these deposits on the valves. By changing to this petrol, will it help clean up my engine?
It will over time. I would encourage you to try it, because you will feel the difference. You will feel the difference when you actually clock in your mileage, because as you use, it will continue to clean your engine. The formulation is allowed to actually remove carbon deposit build-up over time.
Yeah. Will you feel a difference when you're driving?
You will feel the difference that you do not need to pump your fuels as per your usual routine.
Financial difference, I guess. I guess it's easier on the wallet.
Which is important, right?
Exactly.
After 2 years of pandemic, I think what Shell aspire to do when we talk about powering progress and also our brand promise is better by far. Every time or every 5 years or 6 years when we launch a product, we aim to be better by far on what we have previously launched before. So how do we continue to innovate and bring the best product to fellow Malaysian and also globally our consumer? It is our brand promise. How do we continue to bring the best product that we have through our extensive R&D by our fuel scientists is very important, and it's also the core of Shell.
Okay, so the new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95, a major product launch by Shell this year. Do you have anything else big coming this year?
I think we just actually finished the Win Free Fuel for 15 months campaign, and we will continue to actually encourage customers to try out our new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95 to actually enjoy the benefit. We are working with our bank partners, payment partners to actually provide more benefit to the customer, and of course not to forget, beyond the best fuels and loops that we could actually offer to our customer, upcoming we are also introducing a car care product range. So not just your engine is taken care of by Shell, and we hope that your exterior and your interior, your cleaning is also taken care by our full car care range. So watch out in this space. There will be more exciting campaign coming, but I couldn't share more, so stay tuned for that.
There you go, folks. That was Lee Ming, the General Manager at Shell Malaysia's Mobility Division, speaking to Ali about the new and improved Shell Fuel Safe 95. Ali, what do you think then?
I think this technology is very well researched. According to the interview, when she mentioned the hundreds of scientists that worked on fuel efficiency and even mobility research.
Daniel, any more to add before we take a short break?
I think what Shell is doing is good for the lower income consumer. Quantifying the extra mileage, you're definitely going to get some feedback.
Well, that's what they want, really, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a short break here then. And when we come back into the third and final part of the show, its car review is the Jaguar XF P250. Don't go anywhere. This is Cruise Control, the car show here on